Shut up and sit down.
I don't have very much time, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what to do when you finish your manuscript, like literally the day that you just write the end. What should you do? The first thing that you should do is give yourself a little bit of time. Take a week, take 2 weeks, take a month, and then read it again. This is where you're doing your first revision, so you need to revise. I don't care who you are, I don't care how much time you've spent on this, your first draft is going to need work. So make sure that you give yourself time to do that. But before you start, take a little time. When you come back to it, then you're going to do your first revision. And your first revision is going to be driven by you. Then before you send your manuscript officially out into the world, like before you start submitting it to publishers or agents or contests or whatever it is, you should get feedback from somebody else. Not your mom, not your spouse, someone who's going to be honest. Sometimes that can be a friend. Some people have really brutal friends. That's good if you have one, especially if you have one who knows about writing. Definitely get them to read your manuscript and give you honest feedback. Some other places you can get feedback. You can get beta readers. A beta reader is not exactly an editor. A beta reader is sort of like a civilian, somebody just out in the world, but who's experienced, who has read a lot, and they will give you feedback as a reader. So they'll tell you just literally what they thought as they were reading. And that's actually really good feedback to get, because sometimes that's what you're looking for. How is a reader going to experience this? Not the nitty-gritty detail of how the publishing industry is going to receive this, but how does this book interact with a reader? So that's excellent feedback to get. Where can you find beta readers? One great place is Facebook groups. There are several Facebook groups of people who just want to read books, and they want free books, basically. And they want to read books before everybody else does. So you can go to those groups and you can see if you can find somebody who's willing to beta read your manuscript. I will say, just be careful. Try to get feedback on that reader. See if somebody else has used them. You don't want people just stealing your work and uploading it to Wattpad or whatever they're going to do. So be careful with that. Check the person out. Make sure that they're legit. The second thing that you can do is have a critique. I'm just looking at notes down here, by the way. The second thing that you can do is you can have a critique group. So that's a little bit harder, because that means that you need to know a whole bunch of other people who are aspiring writers. And, you're looking for people who maybe are at a similar level to you. So you don't want to have a critique writing group of people who have way less experience than you, or necessarily way more experience than you. So that can be quite difficult. But if you live in a big city, you shouldn't struggle too much with that. Go on Craigslist, go on Facebook, go on any local meetup groups, see if you can find a critique group. That means a lot of work for you, extra work for you, because not only are you going to get feedback on your book, but you have to give them feedback too. So that's one thing about critique groups. Or you could just have a critique partner. So a critique partner is just one person. Again, you're looking for somebody with a similar kind of experience level as you have. Well, the next level is paying for feedback. So you could pay for an editor. It's different than the editor who's going to work with you if you get a publishing deal at a publishing company. So this is a paid editor. Usually that's somebody who has experience in the publishing industry. Often it's an author. Sometimes it's an editor or an ex-editor or an agent or an ex-agent. And you pay them a certain amount, usually in the hundreds of dollars. It depends on what kind of feedback you want. And they will give you pages and pages of notes about your manuscript. And that is really helpful. One of the things that you can do also with paid editors is not even give them your manuscript. Literally just book them for an hour or two where you talk about your manuscript and you talk about the problems that you think it has. And then, you can pitch it to them and then can be like, oh, okay, but what if this? And you really start to work things out. It's almost like having your own private critique group where you can just talk about your work. So that's fantastic. Where do you find editors? Go on Twitter, literally just look up editor. Look up whatever your genre is, science fiction editor, young adult editor. See if you can find anybody. Once you find someone, again, check out their background. Usually they'll have a website. Sometimes they'll have testimonials. After editors, another thing that you can do, so once you've got your manuscript kind of in the condition where you think it's almost ready to go out into the market. You can do another beta reader at that point. I would advise that. And beta readers are often free or not very expensive. So it's a good investment. Get a beta reader. Try to get somebody who reads a lot of whatever your genre is. And then the other thing that you should do is, if you are writing about sensitive topics or topics that involve a lot of research or something that is outside your experience, so a culture or an identity or an experience that you haven't had, then I would advise you try to find a sensitivity reader. And a lot of people are like, oh, sensitivity readers. It's really not that big a deal, honestly. It's no different than research. So my advice is to, if you are writing about those issues, is to bring the sensitivity reader in really early on. So I've done that. Whenever I'm writing a manuscript and a character comes to me and I'm like, I think this character might be X, then I'm gonna go out into my group of friends and group of colleagues and see if I can find somebody who will answer that question. I always offer to pay. Please don't try to get sensitivity reads for free, because that's obnoxious. A sensitivity read of a full manuscript runs between probably $150 and $300. It depends on who the person is. And again, you can find a lot of people who do sensitivity reads on Twitter, on Facebook, and through references, through just looking it up, Googling sensitivity reading, you can usually find it. So that's a few people who can read your manuscript. Some other ways to get feedback are contests. There are a few contests out there. Just look them up. Some of them cost money to enter. So let's say it's $50 to enter. If that every entry includes feedback, that's worth it. Getting somebody to read whatever you've written and give you feedback, a page of feedback from a publishing professional is worth $50, is worth $25. And again, try to do some background research on them. Make sure that they're legit. Ask some people who've entered, ask some people who've won or placed in those contests, what's happened to them, what kind of feedback did they get, all that sort of stuff. The last thing I'm going to say is, when I used to teach, sometimes we would start the workshop and I would be talking to the students about how it was going to go, and a few people would look really panicked at the idea that they were going to have to share their work in class, that they were going to have to read their work out loud, that they were going to have to print copies and give it to all the other people in the class. And I would say to them, if you are not ready to share your work with other people, then you're not ready to be writing at this level. Of course you can write just for your own enjoyment, but writing at a professional level means sharing your work with a lot of people and also taking criticism from a lot of people. And if you're not in the mental space to do that, then you need to get in the mental space to do that if you want to do this as a job, or even as a hobby that you're moderately successful at, because that's what working in publishing is about. So I hope that's been helpful. Leave any comments that you have and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.